automated.
Hello again, and welcome to 3reate. I'm your host, Andrew Newman. 3reate features two types of episodes in a single feed, weekly and interviews. Each week, Nathan and I discuss current trends, our projects, and whatever else is on our minds. We'll also bring you fortnightly episodes where I interview folks across art, science, and technology, where we dive into their stories and get to the heart of how creativity drives them. My AI co-host will now introduce this episode, and I'll be back with you in about a minute. Thanks for listening.
Hello, I am your AI co-host. In this episode, Nathan details his innovative project, a low-cost modular headband for transcranial direct current stimulation. The goal is to build a platform for large-scale remote studies on brain activity, potentially aiding in treatments for depression and Alzheimer's, and ultimately presenting this data to the FDA. Andrew provides an update on his podcast post-production tool, Seeeks, which is nearing a public preview, and shares his significant frustrations with the opaque and unhelpful support systems at major tech companies like Google. The conversation then broadens into a critical analysis of why most companies fail at implementing new technology like AI, arguing it's not a tech problem, but a management failure. The discussion concludes with a deep dive into the breakdown of modern management, generational differences in work styles, and the critical need for outcome-focused leadership over corporate politics and conflict avoidance. And now the humans.
We're back. Yeah, no, I abruptly started recording during our pre-meeting or pre-show meeting because otherwise we'll go for an hour.
We just end up talking. Yeah. And we made a pact to start recording right when we get on. Just start recording. Yeah. And then you can toss out whatever doesn't fit.
And then all the crazy that I say, I'll just forget to remove. But yeah, how are you? It's been another Friday.
Yeah. I'm doing well. I'm busy, but a lot of projects, a lot of different things, but doing well.
I'm still waiting for the Clockwork Orange helmet.
It's coming. It's coming. Maybe not. You could be one of the first testers if you're open to it.
I don't know that I need it, but I think you should call it CWO or something like that, and then you can.
Oh, Clockwork. Okay, I was like, what does that stand for?
CWOH.
Yeah.
Showa.
Yeah.
Shoho?
Yeah. I don't. So what does CW? What sound does CW make? Heart with the hard C.
I can't wait to see what AI thinks of this podcast.
I'm making progress.
Andrew and Nathan made a lot of weird sounds at the beginning of the episode.
Trying to figure out how to pronounce
English.
English is hard. Now there is a phonetic alphabet, isn't there? Like the way you phonetically spell out, or phonetic spelling, I should say. It's not a phonetic alphabet. Although it might be actually an alphabet. There are specific characters.
All right. Why don't you tell me about the helmet, and I'll ask AI what it thinks about the pronunciation.
Oh, okay. It's not a helmet. If anything, it'd be more of a headband, but it is effectively a modular electrical stimulation device. I'm building this out to test if this modality that I'm trying to focus on right now, called transcranial direct current stimulation. I think I've gone over it before, but for all the new listeners here, you effectively apply electricity to your head. It's a small amount of electricity, a small amount of current, but what this current does is it will generate a very weak magnetic field around your head. And because your brain is electrical by nature, that magnetic field has an effect on the firing of your neurons. So everything is very low intensity. So it's not like it can actually make things happen in your brain, but it is a way to nudge behaviors in your brain. So one way of thinking about this might be if you're trying to focus on something without this magnetic field around your head, you're doing whatever. Your brain is firing.
So that's what I've been missing this whole time.
This is one of the applications. We were talking about it before, like the non-clinical route or non-medical device application of this is, I'm sure some biohackers would love to be able to improve their focus by wearing this and then studying.
Well, it works for dogs, right?
Yes.
I'm making a shock collar joke.
So I will say there is a device. There was a device out there where it would do this transcranial direct current stimulation over a certain part of the brain for athletes.
Oh,
So it was a pair of headphones, and it had electrodes embedded in a
yeah,
headband.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, and when you put it on, if you were practicing for your sport and you had this going, then it was supposed to make it more likely that your neurons would fire associated with the task that you're doing. Speed at which your motor neurons react, right? So it's giving you that edge. Or if you're in the Olympic level space, then that
as I am.
0.01%. Yeah, of course, exactly. That small edge is worth it. That's one use case is where you use this device to help encourage neurons to fire in specific situations, which feeds back into this thing called neuroplasticity, which is if anyone has any experience with neuroscience, the neurons that fire together wire together. This idea of
allegedly
as things, supposedly, as it's like a physical activity. As you build your muscles, you do something over and over again, your muscles grow. So that's one aspect. But then there is a clinical application where in certain parts of the world, this modality, TDCS, has been shown to alleviate depressive, anxious symptoms. It can also alleviate Alzheimer's symptoms.
Oh,
so there are different scenarios in which this thing can be used depending on where you're putting the current and how intense that current is, which in turn has an effect on how intense the magnetic field is. But I'm building this because the US has not made, or the FDA, I should say, to be more clear, has not made any statements around the effectiveness of this modality to be used in any kind of treatment condition or scenario. I wanted to build this device in a low-cost, kind of accessible way so that to try and build a platform to collect enough data to present to the FDA to see if a decision can be made. So it's an approach that I don't know will work given the strict conditions of scientific rigor, but it's something that I hope to learn along the process or along the way to understand what are the critical elements of it.
Yeah.
As I've talked to academics in the space, they sort of tell me these things.
I think we talked about this a little bit too before, but something like this, if you could do it cheap enough, would like theoretically open up a large scale study, which all the data that I've seen, and I'm not an expert, but I've read into it, you're talking dozens, maybe hundreds of patients on this. And if you had a full, very large scale that you could do very reasonably during the same time, because like a lot of longitudinal studies, you get into all sorts of weird variability of seasonality, and then you get into world events are going on or just general cycles of people's lives. So that would be a really interesting phenomenon.
100%. So that's exactly what I'm trying to go at. You put it so much more succinctly than I could. But the idea is building a low-cost device that you can apply remotely. So effectively running a larger scale remote clinical trial, quote unquote, I should say, quote unquote, clinical trial, because I don't know if it can actually be classified as a clinical trial. But there are a few operational difficulties with running trials with these kinds of devices. For the time being, these devices are fairly expensive, and you can't really operate them unless you have some knowledge about how it works. But I believe a lot of that can be offloaded to software, so to speak. So as I build this out with a smart controller, it can actually understand what protocol to run, which parameters to keep static, and then record all that information and then save it somewhere so that at the end of any type of session, you have a large database of all of these sessions, and you do big data stuff, whatever, do your AI magic here and then see if it makes any sense. So that's the approach. But I have everything prototype state working. I have a circuit, a mess of wires that Andrew has seen on my desk.
It's totally not a bomb.
You can't say that.
Can you say bomb on the radio?
I was going to say, you can't say that, man.
Bomb, 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 bomb.
But that's what I'm doing. I'm not building a bomb.
The fun thing is you can actually say bomb in an airport, but you may or may not get arrested.
Yeah. You can say bomb, just you have to handle those consequences of saying it. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm stoked to see how it goes. When do I get one? This has been the recurring theme for anyone who's...
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a very good question. I intend to have something prototypable, but this is a conversation that you and I have quite a bit around this idea of how how far do you go in terms of building something out? For someone like me as an engineer, building it is part of the enjoyment. So I also want to make sure that I'm not over investing in building or scaling it out to a specific point without the need to. And that's a balancing game. At the very least, I will build a rough prototype in the sense of just soldering some of these things together in boards. I have thought about putting together printed circuit boards, but I don't know if it makes sense to go down that route yet. Usually you don't see any cost savings until you hit several hundred units in scale.
You can do bulk. And is there a brain for this, or like using like a Raspberry Pi, or are you just like?
I'm using an ESP32 based chip. Currently in this prototype, I'm using one of the dev kits, so it has everything on board. But once you, or at least in my mind, once I hit a point of viability, I will streamline a lot of it. The dev kit includes a bunch of things you don't need. Oftentimes the onboard components in the dev kit, like a ADC or DAC, they're usually lower quality. So you want to make sure, especially if it ends up being used in a clinical device, a quote unquote clinical device, you want to make sure you have the utmost accuracy. So I've schematic all. Is that a word? Schematic?
Sure.
I've set up a schematic for all the higher end components that I want to use. So
I just had a really cool idea. We can maybe cut this if it's too cool. But
no way.
I know, right? But so you hook it up, you're doing the magnetic field thing, you're taking telemetry, and then you put computer vision on it and have people be able to do activities where AI is also looking at the world around you or the activity you're doing in addition to all of the mapping you're doing. And
yes.
You're like, that's part two.
Actually, this is one of the elements that are parameters, I should say, around the clinical trials of the effectiveness of the modality. Is the way it works is you do these sessions. So they're usually 20-minute sessions, but that time is a variable. So people who do run clinical trials, some might do 20, some might do 30 minutes, some might do an hour. And you combine that with the intensity. If you change the intensity for a different duration, all those numbers stack up and they don't mean the same thing anymore. So there is one question around people who have done clinical trials on TDCS is what are the subjects doing during this? So if you're, say, for instance, building this device or using this device or you're doing a clinical trial on this modality and its effects on depression, if someone's doing something like a 20-minute CBT session, like you're confounding the thing you're trying to test with CBT, or if someone's just sitting there watching a video, you have no idea what kind of effect that has either. So it's to say, I think for me, when I wanted to build this out, the ultimate idea was because I am using your mobile device as a controller for the handheld device that does this thing, you could have a guided session or something on their mobile device to keep them engaged, or at least to keep that protocol stable. So you're not having
and we've talked about like eye tracking, and like this is the thing where I'm just like spitting out ideas, but the thing with a lot of these sensor driven devices is that it's focused on kind of one thing, and the reality is that like chips are so powerful now that you can capture people's eye movement in addition to their brain in you could easily, I think it's a really interesting modality of test to be able to say, I'll just use jumping rope as an illustration. For jumping rope, we do the session or whatever with the device runs. Does that change your motor function? Does that change your concentration? So you typically self-report that, right? You're like, oh yeah, I felt like I concentrated much harder.
100%.
But if you're watching somebody's eye movement and you're putting a piece of like a test in front of them, you can actually track a little bit better without actually wiring up neuro receivers and stuff.
Exactly.
How people are doing, or especially people like ADD, who are like they'll take little pauses or they're glancing all over the page. You could like, so I don't know. I think it's a really cool platform, and maybe that's like where I'm at, and we've talked about it enough where it feels like a really cool platform idea, and I'm excited to see all the different ways you could adopt it as well.
Yeah, we should definitely talk in more detail, because I think you're absolutely spot on. I think that's the idea. And I've envisioned this device as a platform. So right now, the device itself is just the vehicle, but the real offering is everything bundled together. Is once you have that base for using this, because it is so ingrained into the process already, whatever feedback you're capturing. That's one of the big elements with this device or this modality is how are people capturing feedback? And this actually applies to just depression in general. There's a lot of self-report, a lot of surveys, a lot of tests, but having some way to tap into a measured signal is one way to.
We've talked about this a lot too, but interoperability in healthcare is just total dog. Yeah. It's really bad. Like it barely works. I would say it doesn't work. Like some stuff does, but it's frustrating to live in the world that I live in with AI. And I was literally like working with AI this morning on my project, or one of them. And I don't know, before I go on the tangent, do you have anything else you want to?
No, yeah. I think that was almost a perfect segue. You should just go right for it.
Yeah, I've been working with AI this morning on one of my projects, and it's such a weird world to live in that I can use a few English words and develop a multi-stack technology with code and even deploy. Like I don't use AI to deploy stuff, but you can. And then you have healthcare where I could literally walk across the street and the other facility that might even be owned by the same hospital entity can't see my information.
Yep. Yeah.
And the only reason that is because of the healthcare monopolies that exist in software. And it's bullshit. It has nothing to do with your privacy, your HIPAA data, all this nonsense. It has everything to do with they will not let anyone interact with the data. They make the data incredibly challenging. And then when it comes to like other like healthcare machines, there are common protocols. They work like absolute though. Like people who work in the industry who don't have experience to tech think that it's fantastic. As a person who's worked with tech, in health, in other spaces, it's worse than the Stone Ages. Because at least like people will like rag on like old technology, like COBOL, right? If everybody rags on COBOL, COBOL worked. COBOL still works in a lot of cases, right? It's almost too good because when it works really well, and nobody can figure out why it worked.
Yeah, exactly.
But so it's really any opportunity, I think, to make an actual platform or universal standards that people can freely adopt without any sort of restrictions is awesome. And I know people give Elon Musk like all this credit for the auto industry where they share patents, but you have to share your patents as well. Yeah. And they don't have a lot of the patents that they need for things. So they have to license it. So it's just, I don't know. I keep coming back. It's just so sad for me to see that how closed off the world is and not that like having data accessibility is like the only thing keeping healthcare in the dark ages, but a lot of inefficiencies are coming out of that. I don't know. I'm just really excited to see where this goes. I can attest to the wires do probably stuff.
For all I could just show you a mess of wires.
I know, right?
That looks crazy. Yeah. But no, I think you and I both share a lot of the philosophy of open source, and I do intend for as much of this to be open source as possible. Not just because I believe in it, but I actually think that I need to develop the social proof. So as some random guy building this device, if you open source it and you have hopefully people commenting on things that you did poorly, you fix it, or at least showing that you can build these types of things and they kind of work. So that's the idea. But yeah, I do hope to take that to heart if I find a way to launch this.
So so I asked AI, what does CWOH stand for? Clockwork Orange Helmet, obviously. It thinks that it stands for the City of Westminster Housing.
Okay.
Which is pronounced CWO.
Okay.
I see it.
Sure.
Yeah. So you could call it CWO.
That works. Yeah. That works. Yeah.
And then because it's not a helmet, I did ask what CWOB stands for. Clockwork Orange Band.
Okay.
Lots of different things. Frankly, really no good pronunciation. Everything is just CWOB.
CWOB.
So I think it's CWO.
Okay. It could be CWOB.
There you go. CWOB, yeah. we named your product. Get CWOB today. Ask your doctor if CWOB is right for you.
It doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I'll put it on the list.
Wearing your CWOB too long can cause burns. Delusions of grandeur.
That much for sure. I
was thinking of like the Magneto helmet.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's cool. So I was working with AI like I usually do But I showed you a prototype before we started, but the Seeeks product is alive and well. It's still not open for non-private testing, but I think I put a LinkedIn post out this morning. I really hate full stack development, like with a passion. I really, really, really hate it. I can do it, as you saw. It works. It very much works. Actually, I think it looks okay. Like I have some padding issues with words, but that's pretty easy to fix. But I don't like it, and I'm not very good at it, and I'm okay not being good at it. I'm very, very good at all things back end, and that's definitely my strength. But I'm good enough at the front end, and I've learned enough to be able to like use it to show or make the back end stuff accessible to people who don't know how to like write their own API or run their own API. But yeah, so I've been talking about this, I think, for a couple weeks now. It's like I've been using the underlying tech for a while, so it works. And I'm trying to get it out hopefully next week. This should come out this weekend. And I'm hoping to have it in a public preview format this week. We'll see. Nice. It does work, but I need to do a lot of the other businessy stuff. Like I got to have a license agreement and all that kind of nonsense too.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So is there a URL people can access it at, or are you going to wait until all that other stuff?
Yeah, I put it out. It's Seeks with 3 E's, SEEEKS.com. The app is app.seeks.com. Right now, you join the wait list. If you go to the app, it's going to be web app, the app stores. We've been through that. I'm not going to talk through that. Maybe link the episode, but I bitched about the app stores for a long time. I might actually put it up on Apple because the Apple app store is a little bit easier. And now that Epic won the lawsuit with not having to use Apple's stupid purchasing technology, I should theoretically be able to put it up easier. Because this technology that I'm using to develop for the web is very easily translatable to an app as well. There's really no reason.
I thought Apple was the one you had the main gripes with because you had to try and hook into their payment.
I don't have to do that anymore because Epic won their lawsuit.
Yeah, but if you're going to deploy to Apple, might as well also deploy to Google because
Google's kind of hard though. Like I believe you can do the same thing with them too, but they like actually removed my old app without. I guess they told me, but I don't know if I got an email. But the other thing is like working with Android, I find is a lot more difficult. Apple's walled garden ecosystem removes a lot of the things that make it harder to work with.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like it's the reverse for a lot of other people.
I know. But then with Android, there's a lot more variability, right? You have all these different devices. They support a lot more. And like from a user perspective, I like that. And from a consumer perspective, I like it. But from a like guy who's putting out an app this isn't like my sole business. This is like a project that I'm releasing.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to maintain. I've run through a lot of different problems with different device types, Android targets. Like iOS is bad enough, but the cool thing, with iOS is that one target runs on the Mac, runs on the iPad, runs on the iPhone.
Yeah. As you're explaining it, okay, it makes a lot of sense.
And I hate them both, but the thing with the iOS that I hit the snag on was this stupid payment thing. And then Apple wouldn't communicate or didn't communicate well to what the actual, I had some sort of policy violation and they didn't tell me what it was. They gave me some really vague like sentence. And I was like, I have no idea what this means. Can you at least refer to your own policy document? Which they couldn't do apparently. And I finally got some guy on the phone. Literally, it was like a 5-minute conversation. He said, oh yeah, you just need to do this. I was like, this took me a month. Google I had some problems with, but same kind of thing. They threatened to remove my app randomly, and I was like, why? And they're like, policy violation. I was like, great, what policy violation? And then 3 months later, they were like, oh yeah, just kidding. You're good. But they're like, if you don't address this policy, and it literally said this policy violation.
Yeah.
Super valuable information there. So it's some of that. I'm sure I fucked it up, right? It was my first time pushing to either app store.
Yeah.
But the lack of like transparency or the lack of assistance, and this is where AI really falls on its face, is that there's a difference in my mind now. There's a difference between help and support. If I need help, I probably just need a document. I need some information. I need some gaps filled in. But if I need support, I probably tried all that, or I'm beyond what the support documentation can really get me, and I need probably a human, or I've hit some kind of edge case. To rag on Google more, I've been having an issue with their service accounts in GCP. Yeah.
Instantly know what you're talking
You've
about.
listened to me complain about this. Now I'm doing it publicly. Where I'm running some functions with some of their AI stuff, and in a part of a new project that I'm working on that will probably spin out into an actual product. But I had to migrate from the Gemini SDK to Vertex or the new, I don't remember what the other one was, basically the same thing. So I did that. Should be really easy. You pull a library, change the words a little bit, and then it works. No, not at all. And so the same account that I was using for the Gemini SDK with all the permissions ironically, I was using the Gemini SDK to call Vertex,
a Vertex AI endpoint.
endpoint. And you can use it to do Gemini, which is different. Gemini is designed, this is something I learned by talking to people at Google, that, and maybe it's common knowledge now, a year and a half ago it wasn't, that the Gemini API is designed for you to be really easy to like literally just call the API. You have an API key, you roll it, you go. Whereas Vertex, there tends to be a lot more options, flexibility, features, whatever you want to call
power
it.
User, basically power user mode.
It's not, I don't think it's that much more cumbersome to set up and use, but you have a lot more ability with it as well. So the Gemini idea was just like, here's your API key, here's what you call, you get your whatever back, and it's good to go.
Yeah.
They're changing that up again. Anyway, so I built the project with this on Gemini, figured out the whole Vertex thing was better. And I think actually when I built the very, 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 very first version of this a long, long time ago.
Weren't you using the Vertex AI?
I was.
SDK at that point?
Yeah, and then the newer models were only available via Gemini, or I got credits or something. Sure. I don't know.
Sure.
So anyway, it didn't work. The same service account. So I went through the permissions checker. It all checks out. I have all the roles correct. I troubleshot it for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. And I think I was texting you, I was texting some other people, and I'm just like, what the am I doing wrong? Because this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Finally said, what if I just ran it as my own account? And so you should be running this stuff probably as a service worker. Sure. And it worked fine for my account. And it's same permissions. I have more permissions on my account. I was trying to, I ended up giving it like super org admin or whatever it was. That didn't fix it either. So there has to be something broken in like Google Cloud land that's not obvious to me, or it could be a setup thing. Like I totally acknowledge that, but like the permission for the endpoint problem that I'm having now exists. So before, when I was having this issue and I went back to Gemini SDK, the endpoint that it was calling didn't even exist on the internet. Like there's no documentation. Now there's documentation. And then they're like, oh, you need to enable this role with this whatever sub role or whatever their terminology is. It's there. I should try it today. Maybe I reset or something, but it wasn't working. So then I tried to get support, and I don't have a support account apparently. I'm sorry. I have basic support, which is also called Googling.
Yeah. Everyone has the basic support.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, weird. Okay. Because I've had Google Cloud for a while, and I think at some point I had a human support, or was able to do tickets. So it's like, that's
when you first created the account. And then now it's been a while.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, fine. I'll pay for a support contract. I think it's dumb that I'm using your product. This isn't like I don't know how to configure. I think your product's broken, and I need someone to look at it. And I finally figured out how to buy a support subscription or whatever. Went to try to buy it, couldn't do it.
Like did it give you like what kind of error? Did it give you an error? Or
no, there's just no buy button. Because I'm supposed to. So the way that I believe that it works is that it goes off Google Cloud spend. So the more you spend, you get into a different tier, and they either force you. Right. So the fun thing about this whole thing is that Google is actually backed my company, and I have a lot of Google Cloud credits. So I've not technically spent very much dollars. I've spent credits. So I have a very low Google Cloud spend, which doesn't qualify me for actually buying support.
Yeah,
so how do I get
do wonder
support?
If you have I wonder if you have a CSR somewhere.
I do.
On record,
no, I do.
Okay.
And I'm going to give them a very not kind email. And I want to be clear. I like the Google Cloud Platform, great product. I really appreciate them supporting my company.
Yeah.
Also super frustrated I can't actually raise a human being. at Google.
Yeah.
And I've clearly hit some condition that nobody thought about. And I'll buy the goddamn support with real money. I don't care. But you don't even give me the option to buy support, which is super fucked up.
Yeah.
And then I go to get the billing support, which I get for free. And that's just a Google bot. And I was like, I can't buy support. And it was like, oh, go to this link to buy support. I was like, great, there's no buy button.
There's no button.
Yeah, and exactly. It was like, oh, okay, thanks. And I was like, really? Like, I just said there's no buy button. Like, I need to talk to somebody to buy support. They're like, oh, great, what can I help you with? And I'm like, your AI bot sucks, dude. Gemini is a fantastic AI model, and I don't know what you're using for this support, but it's dog. So I give credit where credit is due, and Google need to do yours better. But so I got to call my account rep or whatever, and they'll figure it out. But it's just, I've been thinking a little bit over the last few days, and everyone's so freaked out about AI taking their job, or they think, this is why it's not going to work. Or if it is going to, you always need to have an option for human. And yes, that means you're going to have a little bit more support cost, but there are going to be edge cases that you can't account for. And so far AI is nowhere near intelligent enough to figure out how to delineate this.
Yeah.
It could be really easy for the agent to like go look at the website and be like, oh yeah, there's conditions on the sales product and you must not hit the condition. Mm-hmm. And then what? Oh, sorry, you just didn't spend enough money. Go spend more money. I have all these credits, so I have to go blow a bunch of credits so that I can buy support. That's really strange. And I might even have some like weird Google startups credit support contract or something that's not active.
They have these programs,
yeah.
and usually there's people that see these programs or oversee these programs,
100%.
or people associated with them. Yeah. The weird thing with the support thing and the human machine thing is, the weird thing is like the models existed for a long time. Yeah. You have the basic chatbot support where a lot of people got frustrated with it. Just instantly send me to a human. I don't know why organizations haven't figured out that you can have this second level support, which is human, but just have a
because nobody wants to pay for it. That's the ultimate, right? It has nothing to do with customer experience. Everyone says that. It's bullshit. When I need support, or I think I need support, I'm mad. It's an emotional condition.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very likely I have no idea what I actually need. I think I know what I need. And the way all of this stuff works is it's some sort of graph, typically, of decision tree.
Decision tree. Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't hit the right decision tree, or you hit the wrong decision tree, or you make the wrong assumption, like a human will be like, oh, yeah, your computer doesn't work. Do you have power? Oh, you don't have power.
Most humans.
Yeah, but so anyway, and I've worked pretty close with this stuff for a while too, so I'm even more salty when I get a really bad experience. But anyway, so I'll figure it out. But I just basically reverted back, and I have until I think November to fix it, or it stops working or something. So if the app stops working that hasn't been released yet, and you're on it, that's why you can thank Google.
Not to knock on Google even more, but I had a very similar issue with this permissions thing, and I actually got in contact with 3 different Google reps, and all of them couldn't figure it out. We had the right permissions. Too. Yeah, we had the right permissions and everything on the server's account, and no one could figure it out. We even cleaned out the account and created it brand new, and no one could figure it out. Yeah, so we just gave up.
I know. My next troubleshooting step is to nuke the service account and then rebuild it, but that takes time I don't want to spend. Like,
and it also will not work.
No, I know, and that's kind of my assumption on that too. Yeah, so I don't know. Anyway, that's cool. I will hopefully have that out next week. I have a couple other features that I haven't built out yet, but the idea is it's the easiest way to do podcast post-production. You can use it for any audio, but I'm designing it for podcasts, and it just works. It's simple. It's so simple. Maybe to tease one of the episodes coming up, I talked with another startup founder who's using a lot of AI to do the tech stuff in the company, and we talked a lot about how that actually does work. Surprise, they're making money and they don't have any engineers.
Nice.
And 2, all the AI in the world doesn't help if you're not solving an actual problem and people are willing to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I think it sounds really easy to say, but it's so easy for people to gloss over that little detail that, yes, you actually do still have to solve a problem, but you also do need to solve a problem in a way that other people understand, or that they know they have. Because one of the things we're talking about in the podcast was a little spoiler alert, but they pivoted, and the initial product they had was awesome, but it was so hard to get people to understand how awesome it was. That it just, they probably could have went on and maybe made it work, but they decided to pivot for reasons that we talk about. And like why they pivoted and that thought process is something we talked about, because I think that's important. Because the joke is like if you're in a startup and haven't pivoted, you're not really in a startup.
You're in a startup, yeah.
But that's 100%. Part of it. It's and sometimes your product is just tweaked a little bit. Sometimes it's a whole rebuild. Sometimes you check the whole thing and start over. Like generally, there's some middle ground there where you're stripping out some features or like rebuilding on top of another feature to make it more mature. And then that becomes, you're typically in the right idea space, but some companies radically pivot and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yes, that was fun. That was a fun call. Like we had a chat. I don't know.
I think implicit in that idea of in a startup, if you're not pivoting, is this idea that you are not in a startup unless you get out there and learn.
Yes.
The feedback, you need the feedback.
And that's exactly what we talked about. Is if you aren't talking to customers, you're not. Yep. We talked about what cosplaying as a startup founder was, and that's all I'm going to say.
I'm scratching my head here, but
I know, right?
I haven't heard this episode yet, so I'm going to.
Yeah. It'll probably be out. I don't know, maybe in a couple weeks. Like it's in the backlog of things.
It's in the queue.
Do.
Yeah.
We talked about it too. Like the interviews I typically do edit more for clarity. So I do listen to the whole thing after I record, and it takes as long as the recording was. And then I still don't generally edit a lot. If there'll be like, sometimes you'll go on a little bit of a tangent that just doesn't make sense and it's actually really distracting. Or it makes sense, but it's really distracting. I'll edit for clarity on that kind of stuff. But typically I don't. I really prefer the raw
natural
edit. And then I edit for silences if we're just kind of sitting there. Sometimes like a cat will walk in while we're doing a podcast and someone stops talking, and I'm not going to just have that 50 seconds of like dead air or whatever. But so
I mean, actually sometimes that's nice. Because it shows that people are, or it depends. If the pause is coming from someone thinking, and it can be like an awkward pause, but it feels a little more natural to me, at least when I hear some podcasts and there's like a pause because the person responding is thinking about what they're going to say or what they should say or how to answer it.
And I like to think too that if you really do need to think about what you're saying, which you should be, otherwise I said before, you're probably not saying anything new or interesting.
Valuable, yeah.
The people listening also need that time to ponder and be wow, that was like a really insightful thing. Oh, I wonder, or I have this idea, I wonder. So it's a balance between listenability and making it still be real. But I don't know. So that's, I guess, the updates. I know the news, everybody's been talking. I've been sent this article like a million times in the last like week or so. Is this MIT article that I'll try to remember to link to it, that they did a study and they claim that 95% of companies are failing at adopting AI. And then I think the other two big pieces of information for discussion are a third of companies who are building their own infrastructure are reportedly succeeding, and 2/3 of them are not. And so the people who are buying AI infrastructure or buying AI tools, I guess, are having a higher success rate of those who are failing, I guess. I didn't read it too closely because it was...
I was going to say, you may need to rephrase that or speak slowly.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
Yeah. So it was like roughly 2/3 of companies that bought a solution were successful in implementing it, whereas only 1/3 of companies that were building their own infrastructure were successful. So like the takeaway is don't build your own AI infrastructure.
Right. Okay.
I don't agree with that. I think you need to...
it's a survey. This was a survey, right?
I think,
okay. So it is, there's a little bit
build it if you need it. And if
sure.
you don't know if you need it, you should buy it.
Yes.
It's like every other tool. Yeah, it's every other tool. Like if you have and I think the problems with this is so funny because somebody I would call maybe AI skeptical sent it to me, and I fired right back. I think I was on my phone, so I saw the text come in. I saw the headline, and I didn't even read the thing yet.
Didn't even read it. Yeah.
And I fired back and I said, "Can 95% of companies accurately measure any kind of outcome?"
Yeah.
Because if you can't measure an outcome, you're not going to be good at software. And even software companies that are like think they're tech companies or think they're software companies are really bad at this. But yeah, and I think the biggest problem is that it's the buzzword thing. So we're going to go implement AI. That's the wrong.
100%.
You're wrong. Or you're 100% wrong already.
Failed.
What outcome are you trying to drive? Is AI the right tool? Is process improvement a better tool? Is hiring people? Do you need to be doing that work? A lot of, I think, the stuff that AI is quote unquote taking over is like that people probably don't even need to do or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And unless you're doing like specialized models, which almost no one is, and you probably shouldn't be, the AI model is not brilliant. It's just doing work that you probably shouldn't be doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I don't know. I was a little perturbed by it because it's feeding this kind of doom cycle of it's like anti-hype now. It's so overly hyped by he who shall not be named, and he's doing a huge disservice. Yeah, there's the big three AI companies and Meta.
Maybe two. Okay.
I'm
so
leaving them
Meta
out.
is not the one. No, he who should not be named. Which one is? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
he's the one who wants to build AI Jesus.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say. I think I know which one.
Which I guess, biblically, would make him Mary, right?
Yes.
The mother of AI.
I guess you could say that.
There's a picture.
Not too well versed.
I have a whole new perspective on that person. But no, I very much dislike them and their company, and I don't even want to say it anymore because I don't want to give it oxygen. I will say Anthropic is a much better company doing much better things. Like they're still a capitalist corporation, but they're actually trying to approach problems with AI in a way that doesn't entrap people into it. And
they got very interesting papers, by the way.
I know. I love the openness and the transparency that they provide. And I will say also Google is doing a very, very fantastic job with foundational models. I will say that like the usability of the Gemini product without API land is very basic at this point. I understand why they're embedding Gemini into their entire suite of tools. It's a duh. Like, of course you should.
Yeah.
I don't know what the value is. I'm very dubious on the value. Like the meeting note taking is really great and it's mostly accurate. The summarization, which is what AI, the only thing LLMs are good for in my mind is like summarization of knowledge, and you still got to check it. But that works pretty well. A lot of the other stuff, the enhanced search, like it's really still hit or miss. It's still early days too. Like I think they're big enough too. Well, they'll get the user data and then they'll make it better. And if anyone's going to crack AI, it's Google. Like Microsoft maybe, but like Google has the tech chops. They have the platform. They have the teams.
I think that's one of the reasons why they roll it out so early all over the place is they're going to collect the data.
Yeah, no, so I agree with that. And they're pretty good about being like, this is like a beta or this is a preview or don't trust it for any mission critical stuff, but we think it's valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the MIT thing didn't really surprise me. I like hate to talk about this because it's just attention seeking. But I feel like we talk a lot about AI stuff. So I'm like, okay, sure. I totally believe that 95% of businesses who are trying to implement AI are failing. Because 95% of businesses who try to implement software fail because they don't know what they're trying to achieve, or they have some goddamn convoluted process because Bill or Jane decided 100 years ago this is what they were going to do.
Yeah. You could argue if you replaced AI with some other thing that the companies were trying to
CRMs are the same way. Help desk systems. This is not a AI unique problem at all. It's a tech problem for companies who don't do tech.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies think they do tech and they don't. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I mean, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think you summarized it very well in the first minute of introducing it.
Andrew GPT.
Or it's going to be the title. Add the GPT after it. But one of the issues that I saw with AI and AI adoption were people were expecting this magic solution that it would do something. So people were trying to adopt it, but if you don't know what you're trying to do with it, it's a tool. If you don't know what you're going to try to do with it, it doesn't matter whether you adopt it or not. So it was. I think it's a mix of a few different situations. Like one is people don't know what to use it for, but they need to adopt it. So what they end up doing is start picking things off the low priority list, and then when it comes time to evaluate, it was like that was never high priority anyway. So even if you built a solution that did work, you're not going to keep it around. Yeah. So they deem that as a failure. So it's just the way of how you think about approaching these types of technologies and how you use them that really affects whether they become quote unquote successful or not. And many people had that wrong idea to start with.
Yep.
So they were dead on arrival.
Yeah. And it like the generative AI stuff too is valuable if you use it in the right way. It's not replacing people. And I feel like this is more in line with the problem of like management, where the higher up you get from the work, VP level or even director, and depending on the size of your company, you're so far removed from what actually happens that you have the cognitive dissonance or the cognitive bias of what should be really easy to adopt. Or you talk to somebody who at a really high level, abstract level is, oh yeah, we implemented AI and we saved all this money. We should be able to do that too. You don't understand the technology. You don't really understand what your people are doing. You don't really understand all of the other stuff that your workers are having to do, your reports, your resources, whatever you want to call it. And I've worked in plenty of places. It's pretty much a ubiquitous problem once you hit a certain amount of people that it just all goes to, and as long as you're making money, it's not apparent. But as soon as you stop making money, you lay off a bunch of people, and it's usually the workers who get laid off because the bad managers just want more people to either accumulate power within the company or the perception of value, or they're trying to throw people at unscalable problems is another big one. Instead of looking at like, how do we automate? How do we apply AI? Should we apply AI? Should we build other software? Should we buy other software? We'll just hire Susie because Susie will be able to do it. And then it's really poor management, and then they lay off people. And I think I've ranted about this before, but there's typically no punitive repercussions for bad management. So your job as a manager is to make sure the company continues to make money. If you're not making money, it's not your employee's fault per se. It's you as a manager. And so it's really easy to blame the employees. They don't really have any power in any company. And then the management keeps going on. And eventually though, and as we've been seeing, especially in tech, a lot of managers are now getting laid off because they really don't provide value. And when you are a 5th level director over an engineer who's doing the actual work, you don't really have a business being in the company at that point in 2025. Like in the theoretical structure of work, your assembly line worker is doing the work. Your manager is probably over a product line or a group of people doing specific stuff. You're probably in the trenches making sure they're actually doing it right. You're probably training them, that kind of thing. If you're a director, you have probably multiple different pieces that go together. So you're running the assembly line for the car doors and the windshield and the tires or whatever it is. And they're usually related functions, but they're different enough where it's not a team, or you have enough to do that a single group of people can't do it. And then you're like vice president, and that has the vice president of cars or the vice president of trucks, and they're responsible.
Awesome title.
Yeah, but they're responsible for the whole division or the whole product line typically. Or you're the vice president of infotainment system software because it's so hard to build that for a car. So you have a very specific thing, and then the CEO is in charge of everything, or like the decision maker. We've gotten so far away from that kind of model, and that's 3 levels of management, maybe 4, but now you have an associate director or a senior director. Then you have a vice president. You have 4 levels between the manager. You have a senior manager who the manager reports into, and you have all of this level of bureaucracy that's just completely unneeded. And the thing I've seen also is, I guess in knowledge work, like especially like engineering or in software, the product team are the experts. The managers don't probably know what they're doing, or maybe they're very technically skilled, but the people actually building the thing need to be self-organizing and need to be able to do what they need to do. And like the management is more making sure the company's doing well, people are taking holidays and like getting what they need and showing up to work, that kind of basic stuff. So you don't really need a lot of this management layer, but it's really easy to say, I have 6 people on my team. I need another team. Oh, now I'm a director and I have 2 teams of 6 people. So I need 2 managers for each team. And then you just grow out this like massive monstrosity. The flip side of that, I see a lot of is like management perspectives or styles, and it feels very generational to me. So you have what I'll call like the boomer way. There's not a lot of silent gen people left in business, probably. I'm sure there's a handful of people on boards and stuff, but those are the people. Yeah. So silent generation are those people who were born after World War I, but weren't really old enough to be in World War II or kind of on the cusp. Then World War II folks are the greatest generation. Like all this stuff, it's all relative. And then the baby boomers are the folks who tend to be born either during World War II or shortly after. And then there was this period in the, I'd say, mid 50s to 60s of massive economic boom, aka the boom part. And then we had a huge population boom, aka the baby boom. Yeah. The silent gen folks, most of them, they call them silent because there was a pretty small generation. It's kind of like Gen X, pretty small generation. The World War II, World War I folks really overshadowed everything they did. But those were the folks who, like, the greatest gen, or the World War II folks, really set up systems with, I think, really intentional, very deep ideas of like global trade. So you can think about global trade however you want, but the idea behind global trade was if everybody is trading and everybody is economically benefiting, everybody wins because all economically benefit. And you're probably not going to go to war because you don't want to f up your global economics chain, right? We're not going to go to war with Chile because we need the apples, or we're not going to go to war with Brazil because the beef imports or whatever. A lot there to unpack, but that's the general idea. And they got it done. And for the last 80 or 90 years, that's the economic system of the world, for better or worse. And I would say it's worked pretty well. The silent gen folks were a lot of the people who inherited that system, were really close to it, were probably old enough to remember what it was like before, this bridge generation. They fucked up a lot of stuff, to be honest. A lot of the social benefits in the United States, at least, came out of the World War II generation and a little bit of the silent. But it was like we were going to end the World War I. We fucked over all the people who fought in it. That's been a very big U.S. history thing. Fixed it with World War II a little bit more. People didn't quite get everything that they were promised or entitled to, but a lot of those people went into government, tried to fix stuff, tried to build social services. There's a whole reaction to that with the trickle-down economics ideas. Silent gen folks just kept it moving. They fucked up a lot of stuff. They inherited a lot of these systems. They're not really around anymore. The baby boom folks are the people who are currently in charge in a lot of companies or trying to retire. They took all these systems that were developed and basically ran them to the bone, right? They inherited this pretty well-designed everything and decided, instead of keeping things in warehouses, we'll just do just in time. So there'll be no extra stuff sitting in the warehouse, so that when something like COVID happens, we don't have any masks, because why would we need the masks? Like, that costs money. It's a waste of resource. We could make more profit. And I'm speaking in platitudes in generality.
Always got to preface that,
But generally speaking, in my perception, this is where we're at. The boomers, though, were very good at process. So they inherited a lot of processes from the greatest and the silents. But the boomers are very good at collectively working as like a group of people to do a thing, identifying tasks, and for the most part, getting it done. But they're very inflexible. Right. So you give them a bunch of crazy problems, they'll figure it out eventually, but they cling to their way of doing
tried
things.
And true.
And anyone who has boomer parents are like, they're like, oh my God, mom and dad. And that's a way, right? It's not the way, but it is a way. And in large, that's the generation. That worked really well when you went and worked at the company for 20 years or 30 years and started as the janitor and worked your way up to the CEO. Everyone's heard that story. And it's not that you can't do that today, but most people who are working or entering the workforce are in 10, 15 jobs by the time they're 20 or 30 years in. So that world doesn't exist anymore. But the idea was that you're loyal to the company, you got a pension, they're going to take care of you, you're going to work your 20 years. And so then the Gen X folks, or the tail end of that, they're always the forgotten generation. the latchkey kids, the boomers and the silent generation, I guess, just neglected them and they had to figure everything out themselves. Poor Gen X. They inherited this wonderful boomer system of the baby boom, the economic boom. You couldn't help but make money in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah, there was some crises and stuff, but if you look at the actual economic data, everyone got richer really, really well. Like you didn't really even have to be, certain industries for sure, but like the entirety of the GDP of the country and everyone in it went up. Inflation was pretty low after the inflation period in the Volcker period. And even though it was really bad for that, most people in the Gen X or the boomers, they had their houses or they were in a
stable,
in a good job where they had the money to, and it was tight and it was hard, but they had the ability to weather that storm. And then with the dot-com boom, a lot of the Gen X people benefited from that, either in technology or just the general economy. Clinton ran a surplus in budget, partly because of the dot-com boom. That was the old, the first time in 30 years, and we haven't ran a surplus since. So they were able to benefit from that. They were able to get really cheap housing. Yeah, it was they got screwed over on a lot of the programs because the baby boomers canceled all of the good pensions and stuff. But the 401k, they were able to get in on that when the stock market was, 30, 40 times cheaper than it was. So they've been able to grow in that. They tend to be the managers who don't really have management skills. They're the hangout vibe people. They know the process. They'll do processes. They'll invent processes. But they also want to be the friend, or overly collaborative bosses tend to be. On the flip side, there's also a lot of entrepreneurial, kick it all down, I'm going to figure it out kind. And so it's a weird, like in my experience, this is my experiences, but like in my experiences, it's really weird because you'll get a Gen X-y kind of person who, a lot of the companies that, exist today were invented by those folks. But then you also get these people who become middle managers and they're like, we're the family. We're all a big family. No, we're not. We're employees. And I get paid to hang out with you. And if I wasn't getting paid to hang out with you, we wouldn't hang out. It's called work.
Yeah.
And then you have the millennials who I think really hate process by and large, or don't want to sit down and try to figure it out. They've been called the entitled generation, where they expect to win or they expect to get praise. And a lot of the other generations don't do that. I find that if things are really hard, millennials tend to not go the extra way. They might get the thing done, but they're not going to go out of their way to ask the question of like, how do we prevent this from happening again? Or like, why did it happen? Which is that first step to getting a process. This thing happened. Clearly the process didn't work. So the baby boomers would have then tried to figure out how do we make a process and make everybody do the process so the process works. Gen X people maybe do that, or they'll try to invent a new system of doing something to avoid the whole thing altogether. And then it's the friends group, right? It's that family thing where we're all hanging out. We should have fun at work. Like work should be fun, sure, but it's work. You get paid to do it. But there's an expectation there. And then you get into the Gen Z folks who like just don't have social skills, as far as I can tell, by and large. Like some do, but most don't.
They're old enough to be managers now. They should be old enough to be. Some of them
some of them are.
Yeah.
And the boomers didn't mentor anyone. Gen X didn't really mentor anyone, but they're trying to help and figure out how to grow that next generation. But they're also jaded and by and large. And the millennials, I think, have this idea of the bootstraps, right? It's I got here because I am special in my hard work. And there's some millennials who will try to help and grow, but by and large, I would say I think it's like an entitlement. Yeah, I did the work. I'm here. Gen Z, I've never had a Gen Z manager. I probably wouldn't be very compatible, but the Gen Z in general is also very feelings-based. I have to feel good about what I do. Yeah, nobody wants to feel bad about your job, but it's like your primary motivator is capital value. And those are the people who then also hate on capitalism. And that's the economic system. So if you don't like it, change it. But you can't just pretend that you can do something different. But they also seem to have a lot of opinions. And when it comes to doing hard things or or just working in general, like and the data backs this up, right? They take the most vacations. I just read an article about silent vacations, which I didn't know was a thing. They used to call it not showing up to your job.
I was thinking something else, like going on like a retreat.
Oh, no. So apparently Gen Z will just go on a beach vacation or whatever and check in on Slack or whatever, or
I see.
write some emails or show up to a couple meetings, but they're like pissed off on vacation.
Okay.
And though they don't tell their manager, they don't tell their coworkers, which that is called not doing your job.
Got it. Okay, interesting.
Right. And a lot of companies have unlimited vacation, some don't. So I get it, and they think they're entitled to 7 years off every year or whatever. But yeah, they're also really creative. I don't want to just on them, but it's also like too creative, where it's like we need to come up with a new idea for everything, and it's like part of that I think is being young and lacking experience. I think part of that is a lot of the systems that are in place have just completely failed them. Like they were the kids who were going to go to school, and then COVID happened, and then they either had to sit in their bedroom or go through that whole hellhole, or they were just starting to graduate in an economy where nobody knew how to like do virtual meetings, let alone hire people. And they didn't get the mentoring, and now everything's remote. And so if you do get a job, you don't have that office mentorship. There's not that millennials or Gen Z really got a lot of it either, but there's none happening if you're just sitting at home in front of your computer. Gen Alpha, I don't really know. They're just starting to get into the workforce. I think it's too early to tell. They seem pretty capable, but also very fragile.
Yeah, given the situations that they've grown up in, maybe that's fair.
And boomers were all about grit, right? I'm just going to work as hard as I can for as long as I can to get this thing done. I get it done. Once I get to management, then I'm going to expect my team to do that, and I'm going to go piss off and have 2 martini lunches. Whereas Gen X, I think, has a lot of grit, but they very selectively apply it. Millennials, I don't think know what grit is. They think it's traumatizing, and Gen Z is like actively avoidant of doing anything that might be challenging. And so there's no like right or wrong style, but the collection of skills that you need to function in like a job, or you need to function as a business are lacking. And the style of collaborative everything doesn't work. People do need to be in charge, and you do need to do what your boss says sometimes. And I think we're in a world now where I think it's okay to disagree with it, but let's disagree and commit is something that I very strongly believe in. I don't think you should just do everything your boss says, especially if it's illegal or like morally wrong. Don't do it. But if you have a reason to state that reason, be like, I don't think we should do this because blank. And then your boss could say, cool, but we're going to do it anyway, or we need to do it. And like, okay, then you got to do it. That's how it is. And that could be, you might have a bad boss, and then you need to go get a new one. But it's become a lot about, it's like the perception of work, like how, and there's always been that element of work. It's, Tom shows up at 6 a.m. every time I'm here, and he's always working hard, and he stays till 8 or whatever. He works hard. Well, maybe Tom just fucks off all day and doesn't get his job done and needs those extra hours to actually do stuff.
Right.
But the perception is, but it seems to be like, and again, this is, I think, very related to the MIT study of what is the output? What outcome are you trying to achieve? Because if you don't have an outcome in a management structure, you don't have an outcome for a job or an employee, you can't measure if you did it, but it becomes then how you feel about it, or how you feel about the lack of doing work, because it's really easy to feel things, but it's really hard to actually measure output. And if your company's making a lot of money like we've had for the last 20 years, it's been really easy to make money. No one really asks questions, and you can feel all you want. But now when tariffs are coming in and things are getting more expensive, and money's more expensive, and you have to actually have customers, you're not going to just start a business or run a business on acquiring possible money. It gets harder. And we're starting to see, and I've seen this firsthand, I've heard this from a lot of people, it's these things are breaking down now. And like the primary management tactic now seems to be gaslighting. Right? We need to do, what do you think we need to do? You're the boss. You should be telling me, but here's my opinion. Okay, go do that. You do it. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. but it wasn't the thing you were supposed to do, or something has changed. Well, why did we do that? Why did you decide to do that? Then it becomes all your fault as the employee. I'm like, yeah, if you do a task and you get up or you do the wrong thing, sure. But the management's job is to make sure that there's a vision and that there's understood mechanisms to enact that vision, and that vision is happening and that it's measured. The employee's job, by and large, is to do the work to make that happen. And so that's, as far as I can tell, isn't really happening in most companies.
Yeah, no, I do want to acknowledge that going back to the measurement idea, I think it is difficult, right? Because when you do get to the point of what is your measurement of how well a manager is performing, it depends on what you might expect the responsibilities of a manager are.
Yep.
I'm sure it's not clear cut in all situations, but some might argue that one is, are you adding value some way, somehow? But then there's I would say a qualitative part of it where I think part of a manager's job is to support the people that report to you and see that they have, one, a meaningful perspective on their work, but two, how do they navigate your organization if they wanted to, say, extend their career?
Yep.
So in some way, it is talent growth. You're
and
making
retention.
sure that the people report to you. Yeah, and retention.
Yeah, and I would argue in like the ideal structure, that's what your manager should really be focused on is, are you taking time off? Is somebody being an asshole? Can you break down barriers? We've decided that you were a good fit for the company. Maybe you're in a wrong role, or you have capabilities that weren't noticed that would make you a better fit somewhere else. That should be totally cool. Like, I find a lot of companies don't work like that anymore. People just end up leaving. Instead of transferring with, especially all these layoffs, right? You lay off a bunch of people at your company. They know the company, they know the culture, but you have all these jobs open. So why aren't you cross-training or hiring people who you've already decided are good employees? And I'm sure, some people get laid off because they suck or they don't do a good job, but a vast majority of people who get laid off, probably fine. And it's just really, I'm just seeing this more and more. I've talked to, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, but I talked to 3 people in 1 week that were all, 2 people, or one person had quit just right out, was just like, I'm done. I'm not doing this bullshit anymore. And 2 other people were actively looking for new jobs because their management sucked. And the data is you're 99% or it's like 98% the reason to leave is a bad manager. But people, there's a saying, it's like people don't leave their job, they leave their manager. Yeah, but I don't want to on management too much, but I don't know that there's good management at this point, because the Gen X people entered an economy that was a massive boom. Yeah, there were some dips and bubbles and the '08 crisis and stuff, but they were so well established in the companies. They might have got laid off, but they had the money and the network and the experience to weather it. And sure, there are some people who didn't and they got hurt, but generally speaking, they're fine. The millennials got fucked in that, right? They entered a really weird job market, or were in a weird job market as their first job and got laid off and had a hard time. Didn't have saddled in debt because the boomers got rid of the education system and decided to charge more for it. But we're also still in a market where capital is pretty much free or easy to come by. The world's pretty good. Yeah, there was wars and stuff and people feel all sorts of things about it. But generally speaking, in America, it was pretty good up until you argue it's still good. You could argue that it's gotten a lot worse than the last 5 or 7 years. And then Gen Z has no idea like what the world is like for the most part. They entered, some of them got in a market where during COVID, if you got out of school at the right time, you enter in an ungodly amount of money as an engineer, or no job at all. And so there's this weird extreme in their generation, but they've never managed in a world now where you actually have to have management principles for being able to execute and being able to manage people, like you were saying, like more servant leadership, I think is very important in especially a modern context.
100%.
And I don't think managers are very good at that in large. It's easier to be better at that. But when it comes to like, how do you make a hard decision? There is no good answer. It's only bad answers, or it's the worst case scenario.
Worst of 2 evils.
What do you do? yeah, I'm sorry that you don't like your job, then quit or go somewhere else. Like these are those kind of conversations where, yeah, you don't want to have an employee and just be like, if you're having a bad day, go quit. But this idea is you have to motivate people, whereas almost every company, not every company, but almost every company is a hierarchy. And if you're set up in a hierarchy, the idea of a flat leadership style is a joke, right? Because it's fake. Now, there are companies that are more actually flat, or actually give product teams or teams that are doing work the autonomy and the power to actually do stuff, and they are wildly successful.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies fake that, or they think they're doing it and they're really not. And I think that's like the cognitive dissonance that I want to really get to, and that's a really long way to get to it, is that I feel like everyone's cosplaying as a manager at this point. And again, there are some good managers. I've had good managers. But by and large, and from the conversations I have with people, it becomes it's a lot of imposter syndrome, and it's people making things way harder than it is. But if you're defaulting to, I want to be liked, or my management score is about how my employees think I'm good at stuff, then you're going to get conditions where it's hard to have a hard conversation with somebody if you got to be best bros, or they're going to rate you low because you called them out on something that you needed to call them out on. And now you're going to have a low manager approval score, or whatever the hell they're called. And then your boss is going to be like, your team hates you, you're fired.
Yeah.
So it's measuring the right things for the right outcome. But we've created all of these weird quasi non-quantitative things to try to measure. And then the quantitative things we've created are also just off the charts bonkers. It's, are you making money? Yes. No. If you're making money, how much is your margin? How do you grow it? Sorry, folks, this is capitalism. It's really easy. How can you make the product cheaper? How can you make it more durable so you don't have to repair it? What are the features of the product that your customers are wanting that you don't have? It's really, really simple.
I'm hearing a lose-lose situation here, because it's, on one end, it's okay, you can go qualitative, but then maybe your qualitative measurement is too hard to get a sense of whether you're doing it right. So you go quantitative, but then if you go quantitative, you're measuring the wrong things. So what's the fine line, or what's the secret path you have to walk to get to the right spot?
I don't think there's a secret path. I think it's like the idea of a general manager, I think, really needs to come back, in that you, as the general manager, have the authority to hire and fire, to run the budget, to take profits and allocate them in certain ways. And that requires a high degree of skill, but it also requires a high degree of trust. Like, your boss is probably not going to micromanage you. And the idea of a line level manager is probably more a team lead, and they're really just making sure you're growing. They're more of a mentor. They're maybe more of a domain expert. They're not just a people manager or an HR manager like that.
Yeah. I was going to actually say, can we define, or should we define, the different quote unquote types of managers, because each org is probably different. They have their own sort of version of whatever a manager.
And that's part of the problem, is everybody gets too creative, right? If you're running a product, like I think I've come to the determination that product managers in 2025 need to be general managers. They need to have the hire and fire ability. They really need to be the CEO of the product, which you don't run the whole company. Andrew needs to be able to hire the right engineers, or have an engineering manager who can hire the right engineers, or I need to allocate these resources to hire this type of an engineer, or I need a product designer, or I need blank and blank and blank.
Yep.
And whereas in a traditional company, or in a lot of different companies, you're soft influencing everybody.
Yeah, this quote unquote middle manager, where you don't have any directive power. Instead, you're acting as a middleman between.
And then you just get shitty software, or you get features that lock people in, and you don't really solve problems. Or you get rid of product managers, then you have engineers who are talking to customers who maybe they're good at that, but then you're just building like everything the customer wants, and you're losing the strategic or the business level vision of what you need to be doing, or how you need to be growing. And like at a startup, that might be okay, but at a more mature company, especially,
there's a reason there's a chief of product versus chief of engineering.
Exactly.
Roles for a reason.
And especially when you're starting to take bigger bets or longer iteration cycles, like then you need to have more of a strategic vision or thought behind it. And I also then think that there needs to be the resource accountability and software specifically. I see a lot of, everything is so abstracted. It's really easy to piss away a lot of money and burn a lot of time and then have a PowerPoint and say how awesome the blue button turning red and spinning around the screen did to customer retention.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in the physical world, like, it's a lot harder. You have to fight on physics all day. And if you run a line of 100 tries and it's off by a millimeter and it can't work, you've just wasted potentially 100 things. And that could be the company. Probably not, hopefully not. But and I think I don't know if we talked about this, but if I ever go back to working for not me.
If you ever go back to working.
Yeah, I'm just cosplaying as a startup. No, if I ever go back to non-startup life and work with other people
in the industry,
in an employment type setting, I think I'm only going to work in industries that have some sort of physicality. Because like the software only world is so abstract that most people can't do it. And it's way easier to get a lot of these malformed behaviors in there because then it becomes about soft influence. And I really Jake, because I've known Jake for 10 years, or he had the best PowerPoint. And so you get on this really slow slide of it becomes more about politics and bureaucracy and being able to manage that than actually be able to do real stuff.
So I think you're right. As an engineer who spent a lot of time in software, I do think that happens quite a bit. But I would also say that it can be the inverse as well. Or maybe there's like a U-shaped curve here where there are people who have spent so much time in software, they actually fully understand what the development lifecycle looks like and can actually attribute costs to development of software.
Sure.
So like they know that like in the product, it's much easier because you have to spend money to do things, right? You have to you have all these other costs. But I think those who are really well versed in software engineering do get a good sense of what that looks like. And
I would agree.
It may be abstract, it may be abstract to people outside the space, but if you talk to them in the space, that you can tell they know what they're talking about.
I very seldomly have problems with engineers. It's everyone else in the company who doesn't understand, it's just easy. Right. We need to do it. Or this one customer. And that's where the politics
from that perspective,
comes in.
exactly. And the abstractness, I think that's absolutely correct, where it's very hard to explain that to someone who hasn't trained in software.
And then your software company becomes a company who's run by people who don't know software. Like it's the Boeing problem, right? Like Boeing CEO historically was somebody who worked at the company for a long time, but also typically was an engineer of some sort. And maybe they were a shitty engineer because they were a really good CEO or a really good manager, but they at least knew what the people were doing or like how hard stuff was or had the context. Whereas if you get somebody who has gotten a business degree or an MBA and they're just looking at the numbers or trying to win people over. And yes, soft skills are important and being able to communicate with people is really important. But we've gotten so far away from people who know how to do the thing being able to communicate well that we have this weird managerial abstract layer of a bunch of people who don't actually know how to do the thing or haven't done the thing for 10 years. If you're a software engineer and you haven't touched code for 10 years, you're not a software engineer anymore. Could you go learn it very quickly? Sure, probably. Have you internalized like all the processes and know pretty well? Great. But did something change or some new radical technology come out that you don't know about? So now you're clinging to old knowledge, right? And I think this is the biggest problem with the boomers is they have this world view and this process mentality, and they don't realize that the world doesn't work like their processes work anymore.
Yeah, there's a fluid and crystallized intelligence.
100%.
Yeah. So as you get older, you're more stuck in your ways, or not stuck in your ways. I shouldn't say that, but you anchor on things that you know.
When you get experience, you don't need to try 100 things because you've learned. Hopefully, maybe some people go through life and try the same thing over and over again, but
eventually it'll work.
I know, but there are structures in companies to hedge that. You can be a very mature engineering manager and then get an engineering team and say, let's talk about what you're trying to do, plan it out. How do you know you've succeeded? How do you know you failed? How do we know when we need to talk more, or how do we know when we need to switch? Those are the 4 things. And maybe you don't have all 4, but it's okay. Let's try it for a couple of weeks, come back and see where we're at. But that doesn't seem to be what happens. In my experience, it's more, okay, let's try it for 2 weeks. You come back, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Why did you give it up? you wasted 2 weeks. You should have done this other thing. And then it becomes gaslighting and punitive disagreement with people. And again, I'm speaking in platitudes. I'm speaking in gross generalizations, but I'm trying to focus on the problems because toxic positivity is also a very real thing in a lot of companies that I've worked in and also I know a lot of people work in. Having a hard conversation like this isn't working. We need to do a different structure is something that should happen, but it can't happen because everybody expects only positive things to be said or only.
Yeah. Conflict is not all bad.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have some
and
conflict.
You don't want to be yelling at you're so stupid, Nathan. What the f are you thinking? No, that's not a good way to communicate and that's not appropriate.
That's triggering PTSD.
But I know, but saying this project was a huge disaster. Okay. You need to put some evidence behind it. Why was it a disaster? But okay, great. Like, how can we fix that? Should be the mentality. Yeah. And I find that a lot of teams or a lot of people think they have that mentality and they don't, because when it actually starts to get rocky, then let's just go back to the way where we're all just happy and eating pizza, drinking beer or whatever.
Ignorance is bliss, right? Yeah, just show the rug and there's no problems anymore.
Yeah. And there's not everybody people are conflict avoidant and that's fine, but you also have to be able to live in the real world. And what I've seen is that a lot of conflict avoidant people, especially in tech's full of it, then it becomes that has to be the norm. And it's like, if you're conflict avoidant, okay, I get it, but conflict is everywhere. It's just how it is, folks. Like, you got to figure out a way to deal with conflict. And it's just a disservice to everybody involved. And you will never actually do anything if you're conflict avoidant. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
There are resources out there that teach you how to manage conflict, or at least understand how to navigate conflict, and you may not be ready to do so.
No, 100%.
At least gives you the tools.
I think a really easy way is if you're in a meeting and there's something's hit the fan, it's just, hey, can we write a document from our perspectives? Let's put it all together. We can collaborate, and then let's come back with an action plan and do it asynchronously. You don't have to sit in a meeting and yell and argue but by doing that in an asynchronous way, you get to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Everybody else gets to think and process through it. And then maybe you just resolve it. I find a lot of times, frankly, it just does resolve because someone will make a really good point and you'll be like, well, that's really obvious. Let's do that. It wasn't obvious because until someone said it. But at the same time, like, sometimes you do need to have a hard, quote unquote, conversation. Crucial Conversations, right, is a great way to do that.
Yeah, Crucial Conversations. Yeah, I was going to say.
And a lot of it's a good book. It's like a training series. I'd recommend it. But the Crucial Conversations isn't go yell at people, but it's also don't run away from that either. Like, you have to be able to address this stuff. If it does get too heated, then you need to be able to say, hey, look, I really appreciate what you said. How you said it came off this way. What I found in that, though, too, is then the people who are super conflict avoidant are like, the thing you said was totally appropriate, but I didn't like it because I'm conflict avoidant, and you need to not be pro-conflict. I don't know what the opposite of conflict avoidant is. But you also have to, when you work with other people, you have to be able to adapt to how they work. And I'm a very direct person, so I get this all the time, and a lot of people aren't. But I'm not changing who I am. This is how I am. And I get that some people have an aversion to that. But I also really strongly dislike people who can't say what they mean. But I work with them, right? We don't have to be best friends. We have to be able to work together. And that means I have to be a little bit more patient or work or give people time to think or write it down or some other process. But because the conflict avoidant people are so conflict avoidant, it becomes like we just reject this idea that anything could be different, it seems. And I see this in society in large. But anyway, now I'm just really ranting.
People problems are difficult. Right?
Yeah.
But there's a saying in engineering, it's like when you work on any problem long enough, it turns into
It's always problem. A people problem. Everything is a people, 100%.
Yeah.
But I just see this more and more. And as the hard conversations of, do we continue to invest in this thing? Do we spin up a new thing? We don't really think this thing is working. How do we know if it's not working? How do we change it? The marketing team wants to do this. Like, all these kind of problem sets just balloon and explode. And a lot of people will then leave those environments. So it's maybe we talk more about it in the future too, but it's something that again, it was a couple weeks ago, this thing hit where I had a bunch of friends who are like, one of them was super chill. I was like, you're going to quit? Yeah. Okay. What the hell's going on? And then I got their perspective, but I was like, yeah, it checks out. I totally believe that this is what's going on because I've seen variations of that myself. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that I think a lot of people don't talk a lot about because it's, our company's great. Our team is great. Everyone's great. And then you get laid off or there's layoffs.
It touches a lot of topics that at least I know you and I have talked a lot about when it comes to like organizational structure. How do you build good teams? How do you build well-performing teams? This idea of flat versus hierarchical and these ideas of psychological safety. So there are a lot of these concepts that are embedded in this idea that are all deep topics to explore in their own right. But for sure, especially when you bring in this magic buzzword AI and how people are starting to work with AI. And I think perhaps that's why it's one of the reasons why people are starting to see its impact is it does change the way we work with people.
Yep.
We don't really know what that looks like yet, but it's happening. And we don't even know how it was working, how people were working with other people before AI came in.
No, 100%. And the AI is going to take over Jane's position. And well, oops, we realized that Jane was doing a lot more and producing a lot more valuable stuff than just this thing that we thought we were going to replace. And again, that's the lack of awareness from a leadership or a managerial perspective of what your team's actually doing, or not investing in other technologies to solve the problems. And now they become these big balloon manual human tasks that have to be done because there's no other way to do it, because you won't buy the software, you won't invest in the training or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's a good spot to leave it.
All right. Sounds good.
See you next time.
Take care.